In the ruins of New Seoul, the afternoon sky turned an unnatural shade of purple as alien warships moved into position. Captain Jin-Soo Park lowered his binoculars, his face grim beneath the layer of dirt and dried blood. From his vantage point atop the damaged communications tower, he could see the full extent of humanity's defeat. The once proud city stretched before him in rubble and smoke. Buildings toppled like children's toys. 3 years of war against the Talon Collective had reduced Earth's military forces to scattered pockets of resistance. Jin-Soo's squad, 20 soldiers holding a position designed for hundreds, represented the last organized human military unit on the planet. Status report. Jin-Soo called down to his second-in-command. Lieutenant Yoon-ji Kim climbed the metal ladder, her movement careful and deliberate. She had been wounded 2 days earlier when their transport was shot down. The medical supplies had run out last week, so the gash on her forehead remained untreated except for a dirty bandage. "Not good, sir," she said, reaching the platform. Kim Ho and Sang Min finished, setting the mines along the eastern approach. Min Jae has the heavy weapons positioned, but we're down to 30% ammunition. She wiped blood from her face, leaving a smear across her cheek. "They're coming in from the east. Thousands of them." Jin-Soo nodded. This was it, the end he had been expecting for months. The aliens had superior technology, greater numbers, and complete control of orbit. Humanity's only advantage had been determination, but even that wasn't enough anymore. "Get everyone to their positions," he ordered. Tell them I'm proud to serve with them." Im-ji gave a sharp nod and headed back down the ladder. Jin-Soo turned his attention to the small device on his wrist, a specialized communicator, but also something much more important. He traced his fingers over its smooth surface, remembering the day General Song had given it to him. "If all else fails," the general had said, "you activate Protocol Lazarus. But only if there's no other option. Those who sleep beneath the mountain, they're our last resort." Jin-Soo had been one of only 5 officers entrusted with the Lazarus key. As far as he knew, the others were all dead now. Below, his soldiers moved efficiently despite their exhaustion. Jin-Soo felt a surge of pride watching them. Private Yuna set up her sniper position, her movements precise despite having lost 2 fingers in last month's battle. Sergeant Han checked the squad's remaining grenades, distributing them with care. Corporal Ji-Hoo, their communications expert, tried one last time to establish contact with other human forces, though they all knew there were none left to reach. The first explosion came without warning. One of the perimeter mines detonated, followed by a second and third in rapid succession. Through his binoculars, Jin-Soo saw the alien ground forces advancing, towering figures in metallic armor, moving with unnatural speed and precision. "Contact east," shouted Sang Min from his position. Multiple hostiles. The squad's remaining heavy gun opened fire. The alien front line faltered as several of their soldiers fell, but others quickly moved forward to take their place. Jin-Soo keyed his communicator. "All units, fire at will. Make every shot count." The battle was joined. Human weapons fire met alien energy weapons in a deadly exchange. For a brief moment, Jin-Soo allowed himself to hope. His soldiers were fighting well, their defensive position giving them an advantage despite being outnumbered. That hope died when the alien air support arrived. 3 shuttle-sized craft appeared over the eastern horizon, their weapon systems already charging. "Take cover," Jin-Soo shouted, but it was too late. The first energy blast hit the southern section of their perimeter, vaporizing 2 soldiers instantly. The second struck their ammunition cache, sending a fireball into the air that showered the area with deadly fragments. "Captain," Yunji's voice came through his communicator. "We can't hold them." Jin-Soo watched as alien ground forces pressed their advantage, moving through the gaps created by their air support. Sang Min and his team fell back, firing desperately. Private Yuna's sniper position went silent. Corporal Jihu screamed as an energy blast caught him in the leg, the sound cutting off abruptly when a second blast hit him directly. The tower beneath Jin-Su shuddered as an energy beam struck its base. Metal groaned, supports bending under the strain. He knew he had only moments before the structure collapsed. Jin-Su looked at the device on his wrist. Protocol Lazarus, humanity's final desperate gamble. He had sworn to activate it only when all hope was lost. That time had come. Another blast hit the tower. Jin-Su stumbled, barely catching himself before falling. Below, he could see Eunji organizing a fighting retreat toward the tower's base. She looked up, meeting his eyes across the distance. Something passed between them. Understanding. Acceptance. She nodded once, then turned to cover the retreat of their last 3 soldiers. Jin-Su's hand hovered over the biometric scanner on his wrist. What he was about to do felt like an admission of defeat, yet also like passing a torch. Humanity as it existed might fall today, but perhaps something of them would survive. The tower took another hit. Metal screamed as support beams gave way. Jin-Su pressed his palm firmly against the scanner, waiting for the confirmation tone. The device warmed against his skin, reading his DNA, his heartbeat, his body temperature, making absolutely certain of his identity. A soft beep, followed by a mechanical voice. Identity confirmed. Captain Jin-Su Park. Authorization accepted. Protocol Lazarus, he whispered as the tower began to fall. The words felt heavy, significant. The device beeped again. Protocol Lazarus initiated. Jin-Su closed his eyes as the tower collapsed beneath him. There was a moment of weightlessness, then impact and pain. Through the haze of agony, he thought he heard Eunji calling his name, but her voice seemed very far away. As darkness closed around him, Jin-Su's final thoughts were not of defeat, but of what might come after. He imagined the sleepers beneath the mountains stirring in their long-dormant chambers, warriors created for a war that never came, preserved for a day humanity hoped would never arrive. That day was today. Thousands of kilometers away, deep beneath Mount Hala, ancient systems detected the activation signal. Backup generators hummed to life, pushing power through circuits that had lain dormant for decades. Lights flickered on in a vast underground chamber, illuminating row after row of sealed cryogenic pods. Inside each pod lay a human, yet more than human. Men and women genetically enhanced beyond normal human limits, soldiers created when the world's powers still feared each other more than the stars. They had been deemed too dangerous to deploy, too unstable to release, too valuable to destroy. So they had been hidden away. Forgotten by most, remembered only as a last resort. Frost began to melt from the pod surfaces as the revival sequence initiated. Medical systems monitored vital signs as bodies slowly warmed. Inside the central pod, eyelids twitched for the first time in 60 years. Humanity had fallen. But beneath the mountain, humanity's sleeping guardians prepared to rise. Colonel Do-hyun's consciousness returned slowly, like a distant light growing stronger. First came awareness of his own body, the ache in his muscles, the dryness in his throat, the cold that seemed embedded in his bones. Then sounds filtered in, mechanical hums, the soft beep of monitoring equipment, and the hiss of his cryogenic chamber unsealing. His eyes opened to a world of blurry shapes and 2 bright lights. He blinked several times, his enhanced vision adjusting faster than a normal human's would. The chamber lid retracted fully, releasing a cloud of vapor that dissipated into the climate-controlled air of the facility. Do-hyun tried to sit up. His body protested, muscles burning from decades of suspended animation. Despite the advanced preservation techniques and the regular electrical stimulation of his muscular system during stasis, 60 years of inactivity took its toll. He gritted his teeth and forced himself upright. A robotic arm extended from the side of the chamber, offering a small cup of clear liquid. Do-hyun took it with shaking hands and drank. The fluid was bitter but effective, designed to jumpstart his enhanced metabolism and clear the last of the cryogenic chemicals from his system. "Welcome back, Colonel Do-hyun," said a calm, feminine voice from hidden speakers. "Revival protocols are proceeding as designed." Do-hyun's throat worked for a moment before he could speak. "Status report," he demanded, his voice rough from disuse. The AI didn't hesitate. Human military forces eliminated. Civilian population, 0.02% of pre-invasion levels. Protocol Lazarus activated by Captain Jin-Soo Park 72 hours ago. The information hit Do-hyun like a physical blow. He had known this day might come. It was why the Lazarus program existed. But the reality of it was still shocking. Humanity defeated, almost entirely wiped out. The weight of what that meant settled on his shoulders like a massive stone. "Show me," he ordered. A large screen on the wall opposite his pod flickered to life. It displayed a series of satellite images showing major cities around the world, or what remained of them. Seoul was a blackened crater. Tokyo a field of rubble. New York partially submerged under rising waters. London unrecognizable. "Who?" Do-hyun asked simply. "The Talon Collective," replied the AI. "First contact occurred 1,247 days ago. Initial diplomatic exchanges failed. Full-scale invasion began 1,122 days ago." Do-hyun swung his legs over the edge of the pod, testing their strength. The revival drugs were working quickly through his enhanced system. He stood carefully, steadying himself against the edge of the chamber. For the first time, he looked around the vast room. Other pods were beginning to open, their occupants in various stages of revival. 99 chambers besides his own, arranged in concentric circles. These were his soldiers, the Lazarus program. Super soldiers created through genetic engineering and cybernetic enhancement, each one specialized for different combat roles. They had been deemed too dangerous to deploy during the global tensions of 60 years ago. The risk of these enhanced soldiers falling into enemy hands had been too great, so they had been hidden away in this facility beneath Mount Hala, placed in suspended animation until a threat arose that conventional forces couldn't handle. Apparently, that day had come. "What about Captain Park?" Do-hyun asked, walking carefully toward the nearest pod where Major Sungmin was sitting up, looking disoriented. "Captain Jin-Soo Park did not survive the activation of Protocol Lazarus," the AI reported. "His final stand occurred at New Seoul Communications Hub. No survivors from his unit have been detected." Do-hyun nodded grimly. He hadn't known Park personally. The captain would have been born long after Do-hyun went into stasis, but he respected the sacrifice. Park had done his duty, giving the Lazarus program a chance to do theirs. "Sir." Major Sungmin recognized his commander despite the decades that had passed. "Are we being deployed?" "Yes, Major," Do-hyun confirmed, helping the other man to his feet. "Humanity has fallen. We're what's left." Around the room, more pods opened. Lieutenant Ji-won, their tactical specialist, emerged coughing from her chamber. Sergeant Han-jun, the demolitions expert, was already testing his reflexes, looking pleased that his enhanced body was recovering quickly. Medical Officer Mei-ray checked her own vitals on her pod's monitor before moving to assist others. "Wake everyone," Do-hyun ordered the AI. "Priority to combat specialists first, then technical support." "Acknowledged," the AI replied. "Accelerating revival protocols." Do-hyun made his way to the center of the room where a large command console waited. He placed his palm on the biometric scanner, and the system came fully online. Detailed maps appeared, showing alien troop movements across what had once been South Korea. "What can you tell me about the enemy?" he asked. The AI displayed images of the Talon forces, tall, humanoid beings in advanced armor, wielding energy weapons. The Talon Collective consists of 3 species in a technological alliance. Their primary advantage is their energy-based weaponry and advanced propulsion systems. They appear to be establishing permanent settlements on Earth, suggesting colonization rather than simple resource extraction. Do-hyun studied the images carefully. Weaknesses: Limited data available. Conventional forces noted vulnerability to electromagnetic pulse weapons. They appear to require specialized environmental conditions in their bases, suggesting possible atmospheric sensitivity. More of Do Hyun's soldiers were up now, gathering around him despite their unsteady legs. These men and women had been selected for both their genetic compatibility with the enhancement procedures and their psychological profiles. They were the best of the best, further improved by science that had been cutting-edge 60 years ago. "What's our armament status?" Lieutenant Jae-won asked, her tactical mind already working. The AI brought up inventory lists. All weapon systems are operational. Power reserves at 94%. Combat suits maintained at optimal levels. The facility contains sufficient supplies for 6 months of operations at full capacity. Do Hyun nodded, satisfied. The designers of the Lazarus program had been thorough. They had built this facility to last, to be ready when needed, whether in a decade or a century. And what of the 0.02% of humans still alive? Medical Officer Mireille asked, concern evident in her voice. Where are they? The map zoomed out, showing scattered dots of light across the continents. Surviving humans exist primarily in remote areas or in hiding. Some are used as labor in Talon facilities. No organized resistance has been detected for the past 47 days. Do Hyun looked at the faces of his awakening soldiers. They were created for war, designed to fight against impossible odds. Each had sacrificed a normal life for the chance to save humanity if the worst came to pass. The worst had indeed come, and now it was time for them to fulfill their purpose. "Listen to me," he said, his voice growing stronger. "We were put to sleep because the world wasn't ready for us. We were weapons too powerful to use except in the direst need." He gestured to the screens showing the devastation. That need is now. Humanity has fallen to an enemy they couldn't defeat. But we are not ordinary humans. We were made for this moment. Around him, 99 enhanced soldiers straightened, their bodies recovering with the supernatural speed they had been designed for. Despite 60 years of sleep, their training remained, encoded into muscle memory and enhanced neurons. "We start with reconnaissance," Do Hyun continued. "We need to understand our enemy before we engage. We need to locate survivors who can help us understand what we're facing. And then we take back our world, piece by piece." He looked at their faces, determined, focused, ready. In their eyes, he saw not fear but purpose. "Wake everyone," he ordered again, this time to his officers. "Review the combat data. Check your equipment. In 6 hours, we begin operations." He looked at the map of a fallen world waiting to be reclaimed. "We have a war to win." The night was moonless, perfect for hunting. Major Hai-Jin lay flat against the cold earth, her enhanced eyes scanning the alien processing center below. Where normal humans would see only darkness, she saw everything in crisp detail: the 12-foot electric fence, the 6 guard towers, the patrol patterns of the Talon sentries. "Move silently," she whispered to her team, her voice barely a breath on the wind. Beside her, 3 other super soldiers waited like coiled springs. Strike Team Delta had been operating for 3 weeks since awakening from cryosleep. In that time, they had already liberated 3 human labor camps across the Korean peninsula. Tonight would be their 4th, and the largest yet. Hai-Jin signaled, and they moved as one, slipping down the hillside like shadows. Each step was careful, deliberate. They had studied the terrain for 2 days, memorizing every dip and rise in the land, every potential hiding spot. Sergeant Taeho took point, moving ahead of the others. His genetic modifications allowed him to control his body temperature, making him invisible to the thermal sensors that swept the perimeter. Where the aliens would detect the heat signature of a normal human, Taeho could lower his body temperature to match the surrounding environment. 20 meters from the fence, they paused in a shallow ditch. Lieutenant Sun Mi's eyes darted rapidly, her brain processing information at superhuman speeds. Her enhancement allowed her to analyze complex situations instantly, calculating trajectories, timing patrol routes, predicting movement patterns. Guard rotation in 43 seconds. Sun Mai whispered. Blind spot will open on the eastern perimeter for approximately 12 seconds. Hai-Jin nodded. Junwoo, you're up first. Specialist Junwoo flexed his massive hands. Of all the team, his enhancements were the most visible. His muscle density was 3 times that of a normal human, allowing for incredible feats of strength. Veins stood out on his forearms as he readied himself. Now, Sun Mai said precisely. They moved. Taiho reached the fence first, placing a small device against the control box. The electricity faltered for just an instant, enough time for Junwoo to grip the metal mesh with his bare hands and pull. The reinforced fence, designed to withstand industrial cutting tools, groaned and parted under his strength. One by one, they slipped through. Hai-Jin pulled the mesh back into approximate position behind them. It wouldn't pass close inspection, but in the darkness, it might buy them time. Inside the perimeter, they split into practiced formation. Hai-Jin signaled, and they moved toward their separate objectives. Sun Mai headed for the control center to disable alarms and communications. Taiho moved toward the power generators. Junwoo started placing small explosive charges at strategic points around the facility, not to be detonated yet, but as a contingency. Hai-Jin herself headed for the main holding area. According to their reconnaissance, nearly 300 humans were kept here, forced to process raw materials the Talons extracted from Earth's crust. As she moved between buildings, Hai-Jin reflected on their situation. 2 months ago, by her perspective, she had been a decorated major in South Korea's Special Forces, selected for the experimental Lazarus program. Then came the enhancement procedures, the training, and finally, the cryo sleep that was supposed to last only a few years at most. Instead, she had awakened to find her world conquered, her people enslaved or killed. She pushed the thoughts away, focusing on the mission. A lone Talon guard appeared around a corner, its armored form standing nearly 8 feet tall. Hai-Jin froze, becoming one with the shadows. The alien's helmet swiveled, scanning. These creatures could see into wavelengths beyond human perception, but the Lazarus soldiers' combat suits were designed to absorb and diffuse such scans. The guard paused, its posture suggesting uncertainty. Hai-Jin didn't breathe. After a long moment, the alien continued its patrol, passing within 2 meters of her position. Once it was gone, she continued toward the holding area. The building was large and warehouse-like, with minimal windows and heavy security doors. Hai-Jin approached the side entrance, where Sun Mai's work should have already disabled the electronic locks. She placed her hand on the door and pushed gently. It swung open without resistance. Inside, row after row of simple bunks filled the space. Humans lay sleeping on thin mattresses, their bodies gaunt from overwork and poor nutrition. The air smelled of unwashed bodies and despair. Hai-Jin's earpiece crackled softly. "Control center secured," came Sun Mai's voice. "External communications disabled. You have 8 minutes before their automated check-in protocol triggers an alert. Power systems ready for controlled disruption," Taiho added. "On your mark." Charges placed. Junwoo confirmed. Extraction route secured. Hai-Jin moved to the center of the room. "Execute Phase 2, she ordered. Throughout the facility, carefully timed events began. The lights flickered once, twice, then dimmed to emergency levels. Across the compound, automated systems reset, creating a brief gap in security coverage. Hai-Jin raised her voice, speaking in clear Korean. "Everyone wake up. We're here to free you. Follow my instructions exactly if you want to live." The reaction was immediate but subdued. These people had learned that drawing attention meant punishment. They rose quietly, eyes wide with confusion and tentative hope. A middle-aged man approached her. "Who are you?" he asked, voice hoarse. "South Korean military, Lazarus Division," she answered simply. "We're getting you out. Gather only essential items. You have 2 minutes." The prisoners moved with surprising efficiency. They had few possessions to collect. Jin noted that despite their condition, they maintained organization, the sign of a group that had developed internal structure to survive. They feed us at dawn, the man who had spoken told her. That's when they'll discover we're gone. Jin nodded. By dawn, you'll be 20 kilometers from here. Now form groups of 10. Each group follows one person who knows the way out. As the prisoners organized themselves, Junwoo appeared at the doorway. His massive frame filled the space. Transport is ready. First route clear. Outside, they had prepared transport vehicles, captured from previous operations and hidden nearby. Moving 300 people would not be easy, but the team had planned meticulously. As the first groups began to move out, an alarm suddenly blared across the compound. Jin's hand went to her weapon. Sun Mai, report. She snapped into her communicator. Unscheduled patrol entered the control room, came the tense reply. Neutralized, but not before they triggered a manual alarm. Jin made a quick decision. Taiho, initiate blackout. Junwoo, begin primary extraction. I'll handle rear security. Throughout the facility, the lights died completely as Taiho sabotaged the power systems. In the darkness, Jin could see perfectly while the aliens would need to rely on backup systems. Everyone move now, she ordered the prisoners. Stay close to your guides. As the humans filed out, Jin took up position at the rear. Already she could hear the sounds of Talon response teams mobilizing. The snap and hum of energy weapons charging echoed across the compound. A group of aliens rounded the corner, their armor gleaming dully in the emergency lights. Jin dropped to one knee, raising her weapon. A specially designed rifle that fired armor-piercing rounds developed specifically for the Lazarus program. She fired 3 times. 3 aliens fell. The others returned fire, energy bolts scorching the wall behind her as she rolled to cover. Taiho, I need a diversion, she said into her communicator. On the far side of the compound, secondary explosions began as Taiho detonated the fuel reserves. The aliens turned, confused by the multiple threats. Jin used the distraction to move, circling behind them. 5 more precise shots, 5 more fallen enemies. The remaining Talons retreated, calling for reinforcements. Last group moving through the fence now, Junwoo reported. Primary extraction 80% complete. Jin made her way toward the extraction point, engaging in brief firefights when necessary. The Talons were clearly confused by the attack. Their tactics suggested they hadn't faced organized human resistance in some time. At the perimeter, Sun Mai waited with the last group of prisoners. Aerial response incoming, she warned. Estimated arrival 3 minutes. Jin nodded. Junwoo, detonate secondary charges on my mark. She looked at the frightened but determined faces of the humans they were rescuing. These people had endured months or years of captivity. Now they were tasting freedom again. Remember, Jin said to her team as they prepared for the final phase of extraction, we are ghosts. They don't believe in ghosts. As the rumble of approaching Talon aircraft grew louder, Jin gave the order. Throughout the compound, precisely placed explosives detonated in sequence, creating the appearance of a much larger force attacking from multiple directions. In the confusion, Strike Team Delta and their liberated prisoners slipped away into the darkness of the Korean night. By dawn, as the alien overseer discovered the empty labor camp, the freed humans were already being integrated into the growing resistance network established by the Lazarus soldiers. The aliens would learn that night that Earth was not as conquered as they believed, and this was just the beginning. Taiho sat perfectly still as Dr. Min examined him. The rescued scientist moved a small scanner across his temples, frowning at the readings on her tablet. The medical bay deep within the mountain base was quiet except for the soft peep of monitoring equipment. I don't remember my family, Taiho confessed suddenly. The thought had been bothering him for weeks. Did I have one before the program? A mother, father, maybe siblings. He stared at his hands, powerful hands that could crush metal but couldn't hold a single memory of a loved one. Dr. Min's expression softened. She was one of 12 scientists the Lazarus teams had rescued from various Talon research facilities. Her expertise in human genetics had made her invaluable to their cause. The genetic modifications affected your hippocampus, she explained gently. Many of you have memory gaps. It was a side effect the original program scientists accepted. She set down her scanner. According to your file, you had parents in Busan and a younger sister. Tai-Ho tried to picture them, but no images came. Just emptiness where memories should be. What were their names? I don't know, Dr. Min admitted. Those details weren't in your military file. The sergeant nodded, his face blank. 6 months had passed since the Lazarus soldiers awakened. 6 months of guerrilla warfare against the Talon occupation forces. They had won victories, freeing humans from labor camps, destroying alien supply lines, even capturing crucial technology. But the cost was becoming clear. The headaches are getting worse, Tai-Ho said. And yesterday, during the raid on the communications relay, I lost control of my temperature regulation for almost a minute. Dr. Min made notes on her tablet. Any nosebleeds? Muscle tremors? Both. In the corridor outside, voices were raised. Tai-Ho recognized them immediately. Lieutenant Sun Mai and Colonel Do-hyun. Another argument. The strain was affecting all of them, not just physically but mentally. Your body is fighting the modifications, Dr. Min explained, trying to ignore the conflict outside. The original program designed you for short-term deployment, not sustained operation. Your cellular structure is becoming unstable. How long? Tai-Ho asked simply. Dr. Min hesitated. Without intervention, 3 months, maybe 4. I'm working on treatments that might extend that. But the door slid open. Sun Mai stormed in, her face flushed with anger. Do-hyun followed, his expression cold and controlled. Tell him, Sun Mai demanded, pointing at Dr. Min. Tell him what's happening to us. The scientist looked uncomfortable, caught between the two officers. I was just explaining to Sergeant Tai-Ho about the cellular degradation. Not just that, Sun Mai interrupted. Tell him about the psychological changes, the aggression, the emotional instability. Do-hyun crossed his arms. We're at war, Lieutenant. Stress affects everyone. This isn't stress, Sun Mai insisted. She turned to Tai-Ho. You felt it too, haven't you? The rage that comes out of nowhere. The moments when you don't recognize yourself. Tai-Ho didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation enough. He had experienced those moments, times when something dark and primal took over, when the enhanced parts of him seemed to overwhelm the human. Dr. Min cleared her throat. The modifications are affecting neurotransmitter production. Increased adrenaline, decreased serotonin, altered dopamine pathways. It's creating a chemical imbalance in your brains. Can you fix it? Do-hyun asked. I'm trying, but I need more time, more resources. Sun Mai laughed bitterly. Time is the one thing we don't have. Either the Talons will kill us, or our own bodies will. She turned to face Do-hyun directly. And meanwhile, we're changing, becoming something else, something not human. Are we even human anymore? She asked, her voice softer now, almost vulnerable. Do-hyun's expression didn't change. We're whatever humanity needs us to be, he replied firmly. Human, super soldier, weapon. The labels don't matter. Only the mission matters. The mission, Sun Mai repeated. And what happens if we complete it? If we somehow drive the Talons off Earth, what place will there be for us then? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Tai-Ho watched his commanding officer's face, looking for some sign of doubt or concern. There was none. One problem at a time, Lieutenant, Do-hyun said finally. Strategy meeting in 30 minutes. I expect you both there. He turned and left without another word. When the door closed, Sun Mai slumped against the examination table. He doesn't care, she said quietly. As long as we can still fight, he doesn't care what happens to us. Dr. Min looked troubled. That's not fair. Colonel Do Hyun carries the weight of this entire operation. He has to prioritize. And we're just tools to be used, Sun Mai said bitterly. Tai-ho stood up slowly. Maybe we are, he said. Maybe that's all we ever were meant to be. Sun Mai looked at him with surprise. You agree with him? No, Tai-ho replied. But I understand him. And I understand you too. We're caught between what we were and what we've become. Neither fully human, nor fully something else. Dr. Min's tablet beeped with an alert. She checked it and frowned. Major Hai Jin is back from her mission. She's having a seizure. I need to go. She gathered her equipment quickly. Take these, she added, handing Tai-ho a small bottle of pills. They might help with the headaches. After she left, Sun Mai and Tai-ho stood in silence for a moment. How much do you remember? Sun Mai asked finally. From before. Tai-ho shook his head. Almost nothing. Fragments. A beach, maybe. The smell of someone's cooking. He paused. Dr. Min says I had a sister. I remember more. Sun Mai said. I was a data analyst for military intelligence. I volunteered for the program because my mother had died of cancer, and my father. He needed the money the program offered to families. She laughed without humor. I wonder if he ever got it. In the corridor, personnel rushed past, responding to the medical emergency with Major Hai Jin. The base was always in motion now, with nearly 500 liberated humans working alongside the 93 remaining Lazarus soldiers. 7 had already died, 3 in combat, 4 from what Dr. Min called catastrophic cellular breakdown. We should go to the meeting, Tai-ho said. Sun Li nodded, but neither moved. I had a dream last night, she said. I was back home, in my apartment in Seoul. Everything was normal. No aliens, no war. I was just me. Not enhanced, not special. Just human. Her voice cracked slightly. It felt so real. We're fighting so others can have that reality, Tai-ho reminded her. But what about us? Sun Mai asked. Don't we deserve that too? Before Tai-ho could answer, his nose began to bleed. The warm trickle of blood was becoming familiar. Sun Mai quickly handed him a cloth, concern replacing the anger in her eyes. It's getting worse, she said quietly. Tai-ho pressed the cloth to his nose. For all of us. They walked together to the command center, passing the medical bay where they caught a glimpse of Major Hai Jin convulsing on a bed as Dr. Min and her team worked frantically to stabilize her. Hai Jin had been the strongest of them, the most perfectly adapted to her modifications. If she was failing, the rest would follow soon. The command center was busy with activity. Maps and tactical displays covered the walls, showing Talon positions across the peninsula. The aliens had begun concentrating their forces, responding to the Lazarus strikes with increased security and new technology designed to counter human tactics. Colonel Do Hyun stood at the central table, reviewing reports with the other team leaders. He looked up as Tai-ho and Sun Mai entered, his eyes noting Tai-ho's blood-stained cloth, but making no comment. We've identified their central command structure, Do Hyun announced to the assembled officers. A ship in high orbit coordinating all ground operations. Intelligence suggests their supreme commander is aboard. That target is beyond our reach, one of the team leaders pointed out. Not anymore, Do Hyun replied. He activated a holographic display showing a massive alien structure built into the side of what had once been Buchan Mountain. This is a direct communication and transport link to the command ship. We take this facility. We can access their ship. Even Sun Mai looked impressed by the audacity of the plan. That's their most heavily defended installation in Asia, she said. Yes, Do Hyun agreed, which is why they won't expect us to attack it directly. He looked around at his officers. I won't lie to you. This will be our most dangerous operation yet. Many of us won't return. Many of us won't survive another month anyway, Tai-ho said quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone knew about the degradation, the failing bodies, the borrowed time they lived on. Dr. Min is working on treatments, Do-hyun said. She needs more time, Sun Mai countered. Do-hyun's expression hardened. Time is a luxury we don't have. The Talons are adapting to our tactics. Their reinforcements arrive daily. This may be our only chance to strike a decisive blow. No one argued. They all knew the reality of their situation. We attack in 3 days, Do-hyun concluded. Prepare your teams. As the meeting broke up, Tae-hom noticed Sunma staring at her hands. They were trembling slightly, another symptom of the degradation. Are you okay? He asked quietly. She clenched her fists to stop the trembling. No, she admitted. None of us are. But maybe that doesn't matter anymore. She looked up at him, her expression resolute despite her fear. 3 days, one last mission. Tae-ho nodded. One last chance to be what humanity needs us to be. Whether that was human, soldier, or weapon remained to be seen. The massive Talon mothership hovered over the ruins of Seoul like a metal moon, its shadow darkening the land below. Dawn was breaking on what many believed would be humanity's final day, or its rebirth. In the hidden tunnels beneath the city, 78 Lazarus soldiers made their final preparations. They had spent weeks planning this mission, gathering intelligence, testing weapons, and preparing for a battle they might not survive. Their numbers had dwindled from the original 100. Some had fallen in combat. Others had succumbed to the cellular breakdown that plagued them all. Colonel Do-hyun stood before his troops, his once perfect posture now slightly stooped from pain. Blood had dried beneath his nose, and his hands trembled slightly, symptoms he no longer bothered to hide. Today we end this, he said simply, one way or another. Lieutenant Sun Mai approached with her tablet. Despite her deteriorating condition, her mind remained sharp, processing data faster than any computer. Final analysis complete, she reported. Their shield has a fluctuation cycle. A momentary weakness appears when they rotate power between defense and weapons. We'll have 8 seconds. Do-hyun nodded. That's all we need. The plan was audacious, perhaps impossible. While strike teams created diversions across the city, Do-hyun would lead a small force to infiltrate the Talon command center built into Bukhan Mountain. From there, they would use the aliens' own transport technology to board the mothership above. Major Hai-jin checked her weapons one last time. The seizures had left her weaker, but Dr. Min's treatments had stabilized her condition temporarily. Transport teams ready, she confirmed. Sergeant Tae-ho stood nearby, his massive frame visibly thinner than months before. Like all of them, he was burning through his enhanced body's resources at an unsustainable rate. Diversion teams in position. Dr. Min moved through the gathered soldiers, distributing injections. This should give you approximately 12 hours of improved function, she explained. After that, she didn't finish the sentence. They all knew what came after. Do-hyun looked at his watch. It's time. He raised his voice to address all the soldiers. We were created for this moment. Whatever happens today, whatever becomes of us, remember this. We fight not just for humanity's past, but for its future. The soldiers moved out in practiced formations, emerging from hidden entrances across the ruined city. The few thousand human survivors who had been gathered in the underground network watched them go with a mixture of hope and fear. The diversion began precisely on schedule. Explosions rocked Talon outposts across Seoul. Captured alien weapons fired on patrol ships. The enemy responded as expected, deploying forces to deal with what they believed was a coordinated resistance attack. With alien attention divided, Do-hyun led his infiltration team through the carefully mapped blind spots in Talon security. 20 soldiers, the best remaining from the Lazarus program, moved swiftly toward the mountain facility. Their first resistance came at the outer perimeter. Talon guards spotted them, opening fire with energy weapons. 2 Lazarus soldiers fell immediately. The others returned fire, their specialized weapons tearing through alien armor. Keep moving, Du Hyun ordered as they pushed forward. Inside the facility, alarm systems blared. Sun Mai accessed a terminal, her enhanced brain interfacing with alien technology through adapters they'd developed. Transport system is on level 3, she reported. Guards are converging. Tai-ho, clear the path, Du Hyun ordered. The sergeant moved ahead, his enhanced strength allowing him to tear through security doors. When a group of Talon soldiers appeared, Tai-ho engaged them directly, absorbing weapon blasts that would have killed a normal human. By the time they reached the transport chamber, only 15 of their original 20 remained. Blood streaked their combat suits, some from wounds, some from the internal bleeding that plagued their failing bodies. Sun Mai worked quickly at the control terminal. I can get us aboard, but the timing has to be perfect with the shield fluctuation. Outside the chamber, the sounds of combat grew louder as the remaining team members held off Talon reinforcements. Now, Sun Mai said, activating the transport. A beam of energy enveloped them. For a moment, the world dissolved into particles of light. Then they reformed in a vast chamber aboard the mothership. Alien crew members turned in shock. They had never expected humans to breach their ship. Du Hyun and his team moved quickly, securing the transport room. Which way to the control center? Du Hyun asked. Sun Mai consulted her tablet, which showed schematics they had pieced together from captured data. 3 levels up, central corridor. Move out, he ordered. They fought their way through the ship, encountering increasingly heavy resistance. The Talons, realizing the threat, were redirecting forces from the ground back to the mothership. 3 more Lazarus soldiers fell. When they reached the ship's central section, they encountered a new obstacle, a massive security door, too thick even for their weapons to penetrate. Sun Mai, Du Hyun asked tensely. She shook her head. I can't hack this remotely. The core systems are isolated. Du Hyun looked at the remaining soldiers. They were all showing signs of strain, not just from combat, but from their failing bodies. The temporary boost from Dr. Min's treatment was wearing off faster than expected. We need to overload the door mechanism, Tai-ho suggested. If we redirect power from our weapons, it would take all of them. Sun Mai calculated. We'd be defenseless. No choice, Du Hyun decided. Do it. They worked quickly, connecting their weapons to the door's control panel in a dangerous improvisation. As Sun Mai made the final connection, the energy surge blasted through the system. The door's locks disengaged, but the feedback knocked her unconscious. Hai-Jin caught her before she hit the floor. She's alive, but her pulse is erratic. Leave 2 to guard her, Du Hyun ordered. The rest with me. Beyond the door lay the ship's core, the central brain of the Talon invasion force. Alien operators worked at crystalline consoles, controlling fleet operations across Earth. They turned as the humans entered, reaching for weapons. The battle was fast and brutal. Without their specialized weapons, the Lazarus soldiers fought hand-to-hand, their enhanced strength and speed giving them an advantage even against the larger aliens. Du Hyun fought his way to the central platform where a tall, regal Talon, clearly the commander, stood protected by personal guards. As he approached, a sudden seizure gripped him. Blood poured from his nose and ears as his modified cells began to rupture. Through sheer willpower, he pushed forward, engaging the commander's guards. He managed to defeat one before his body betrayed him completely. As he fell to his knees, the Talon commander raised a weapon to finish him. The shot never came. Major Hai-Jin appeared behind the alien, driving a captured energy blade through its back. The commander fell, its strange blue blood pooling on the deck. The ship's core, Du Hyun gasped, pointing to a pulsing crystal structure at the center of the platform. Destroy it. Hai-Jin helped him to his feet. Together, they staggered to the core, the few remaining soldiers providing cover as they fought off the last defenders. Du Hyun pulled a device from his belt, a small bomb designed by Dr. Min to react with Talon technology. Get everyone out, he told Hai-Jin as he worked to place the device. Transport back to the surface. Sir, she began to protest. That's an order, Major, he said firmly. Someone has to stay to make sure it detonates. My body is failing anyway. Hai-Jin knew he was right. She nodded once, then squeezed his shoulder. It was an honor, Colonel. She gathered the surviving soldiers, including the still unconscious Sun Mei, and fought their way back to the transport chamber. As they prepared to beam down, Hai-Jin looked back at the ship that had become humanity's prison and executioner. For Earth, she cried as she activated the transport. On the surface, they emerged to chaos. Talon forces were in disarray, receiving conflicting orders as their command structure failed. The diversion teams had pushed forward, reclaiming parts of the city. Hai-Jin organized the survivors to take cover just as a massive explosion lit up the sky. The mothership's central section erupted in blue fire. Secondary explosions followed as the chain reaction spread through the vessel. Across the city, across the country, across the world, Talon ships lost power and control, falling from the sky or making emergency landings. The invaders, cut off from their command and coordination, found themselves suddenly vulnerable. The super soldiers, joined by regular human fighters, pressed their advantage. The battle for Earth was not won in a day. It took months to defeat the remaining Talon forces, years to reclaim the planet fully. But that day, the day the mothership fell, marked the turning point. 5 years later, Hai-Jin stood on a balcony overlooking the gardens of New Seoul. Where once there had been only ruins, new buildings now rose, designed with a blend of human and adapted alien technology. Below, children played in carefully tended green spaces, the first generation born after liberation. Her body had aged far beyond its years. The genetic modifications that had made her a super soldier had taken their toll. Dr. Min's treatments had extended her life, but even with the integration of Talon medical technology, she had perhaps 2 years remaining. The same was true for all surviving Lazarus soldiers. She felt a presence beside her. Taeho joined her at the railing, his once massive frame now lean and scarred. Their relationship had been unexpected, a connection forged in battle that had deepened in peace. They had married 3 years ago, knowing their time together would be brief. The new school is opening today, he said. Some of the children want you to tell the story again. Hai-Jin smiled. Which part? The beginning. How it all started. She looked out at the rebuilding city, at the world being reborn. Humanity had survived, changed but unbroken. And the Lazarus soldiers, once feared as too dangerous, had found their purpose and their peace. Was it worth it? Taeho asked quietly, taking her hand. The question wasn't just about the battle, but about everything. Their sacrificed memories, their shortened lives, the pain they had endured and continued to endure. Hai-Jin watched as a small girl below showed a younger child how to plant a seedling in the garden soil. In that simple act, she saw everything they had fought for, not just survival, but the chance to build something new and better. She nodded, squeezing his hand as they watched the sunrise together. Every sacrifice,